Guys, we're back. I'm sorry about those two separate videos I did on this Cruze coolant leak issue, but had time to come back to the vehicle and look at the finished product. I also wanted to note, some of you guys say you had other leaks coming from these hoses right here. Let me get my little ashy fingers in the video. Oh, but first, this is the finished product. Some of you wanted to know how far does the pin should stick in. Well, that's about how far. Once it goes in, it's locked in. That's a good distance. It won't really go anymore. It'll slide back out. But another lady was having problems on trying to find the pins. Well, this is the motor side, okay, for the Cruze. Once you put this assembly back on, you should see these two slots right here. This slot here and this slot here. This is where that pin goes in, okay? You push this down nice and firmly till it's seated. In the last video, this was out. I had this out. But you push this down, and then you're able to slide that pin in there. You don't have to worry about that gap. That gap is good. But another lady saying she was leaking around her hoses. Well, this is why I did this. There was nothing wrong. Well, this bottom one had a little leak. Because factory, they come with these metal clamps and they have a certain amount of tension on them. They're non-adjustable, and even though this is a 2013, I don't really trust those clamps. Those metal clamps can't be tightened up. These hoses are made of rubber, so over time they shrink, they expand depending on where you live, what climate you live in. In the cold, they shrink. In the summer, they heat. And all of that expansion and, you know, hot and cold, you get this expansion and shrinkage, expansion and shrinkage. And over time, these hoses actually get a little bit smaller. Some people call them dry rot. This is why I like to go with these circular rings right here. You can get these from AutoZone, but I went back and replaced her clamps with these. When I took this off, I recommended to her just to put these on here right here. These can be adjusted if you see a little leak. And actually this bottom was leaking a little bit. She called me and told me, if you can see right here, there's a little leakage there. This is old. That's old. When I first did this install, I told her I didn't want to tighten these up and super tight. I just tighten them up nice and snug, you know, give the car time to settle and expand. And I came back and I tightened this up about 4 days ago. We haven't had any more leakage. You know, you don't want to crank down like crazy on these, but this is a good thing to put on these hoses. And you notice how I have them facing up. So later on, if she wants to tighten them up, she can do it easily with a flat head, okay? You don't have to crank this stuff down. And usually with this type of stuff, you don't get any leakage. Some people, even after they tighten them down, they bend these little fins up. But that's not really necessary. You know, you can bend these up if you want. But sorry I didn't get a full video on the first one with the issue you guys were having. But basically what I was saying with this piece here, this whole piece right here is brand new. This is the piece that was $21. Oh, and this is the type of clamp I'm talking about. I don't really like these clamps. They, over time, they get kind of loose. And I usually replace those with those also. But this piece here, as I was saying in the first two videos, is pretty much where your leak is going to come from right here. And GM knows this is an issue with these cars. From what I've researched, these cars run typically a lot hotter than they were designed to. I mean, not GM, Chevy, from my understanding, they knew this car runs at a little hotter temperature. So what we did was, we don't run the 50-50 mix as recommended. When we did this car fix, we went with straight 100% coolant. Now, I'm not advising anyone to do that, but that's just what we decided to do. With the 50-50 mix, this motor seems to run a little too hot normally. And when I was working on this car the first time, I even noticed that when I was down here messing with this stuff. This motor was super hot everywhere, and these parts are made out of plastic and rubber, and this coolant is running through here, and if they made a mistake and these motors are running typically hotter than they're supposed to, you're going to have a lot of premature failures with certain parts. So when you run a straight coolant, and we still run the recommended coolant for the vehicle, we just don't do the 50-50 mix. You can buy it in 50-50 mix. You can buy it 100% coolant mix, which, you know, some people go back and dilute it with water, but we run a straight coolant 100% mix in this vehicle, and she hadn't had any problems. We're gonna keep an eye on it, but what we do know is that the recommended 50-50 mix for us and for other people just wasn't working. These parts are getting burnt, they're getting heated, superheated, and that heat and cold causes this stuff to snap and break. This stuff is nothing but plastic parts, guys. But that's it. I'm not gonna make this video too long. I'm not gonna take it apart because these cars here are kind of fidgety. When you get in here and mess with these little plastic pieces too much, anything can happen. You don't want to be messing with these parts. You don't want to be changing these parts unless you have to. This is a brand new piece, but the way this car gets hot and runs, you mess with it too much, you probably can snap the new piece. And that's why you saw in the last video I had a screwdriver in the last video, or a screw to take that piece out the bottom, because I was saying in that video a lot of customers was buying this piece, but they still couldn't get it all the way down because the broken piece was still in there. So all you do is you take your little screw with some coarse threads, a little bit wider than what that hole is in the last video. If you look in the last video, you can see a piece in the bottom of this with a hole in the middle. Take a screw, stick it in there, and it should pluck right out. You might have to do it a few times, and that way you can get this whole new assembly, because this assembly comes with that piece attached to it. That's the piece that's shearing off. It's getting stuck in this bottom piece, and people are buying this piece, and the dealership saying they're coming back and buying this whole assembly here. They're coming back buying this whole assembly that you have to take all of this off. You probably have to get a mechanic if you're not mechanically inclined. They're coming back and buying this whole complete piece because they can't get this new piece in here. You don't have to do that. And the dealership was telling me people are coming in all the time buying the piece that they need. They can't get it in because that butt sheared off piece is stuck in here. So they're coming back buying the whole piece, getting a mechanic to do it, or getting somebody they know to do it. To get that piece out, it pops straight out with a screw. So, but you don't know what you know. Like I say, you don't pay in life for what you know. You pay in life what you don't know. So hopefully that's a good little finishing up on this video, guys. But haven't had any more leaking issue with this vehicle. It's running pretty good, and hopefully this can clear up the first two videos I did. I know you guys was messaging. It seems to be a pretty big popular subject with the Cruze, but hey, there you go. And just be careful when you're messing with this piece. You know, you slide this clamp off, and that piece should come straight out once you slide this off. But just be careful with this piece. You might break it yourself, but if you do, check for that sheared off piece. And that's it, guys. Get you some of these here, AutoZone. You can get an assortment of them. I forgot what size they are. They have an assorted pack. You know, take back what you don't need or whatever, or just keep it for something else. All right, peace.